20, 30 years ago, where someone could have access to a trap line and just have a snowmobile, and that could be their job, and it could sustain them. They could live in this cabin all winter and make enough money to sustain themselves over the summer, and that would be what they do. But now, these trap lines are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it's very, like, the entry point's it's a challenge for everybody to get into. You have to get to know someone who has a concession and is willing to let you be an assistant trapper on their line. So yeah, we feel it's like an opportunity that's unique, but very needed in the Yukon.
Welcome to the Co-Management Commons podcast. My name is Jamie Snook. I am your podcast host, and I have been working in and with Indigenous communities for over 20 years now. I am joined in this podcast by some of the leading practitioners, researchers, elders, and community members from this sector, where we discuss co-management in Canada with Indigenous peoples from coast to coast to coast. Please check out the show notes, where we always share lots of other resources. And in between episodes, your feedback is always encouraged and appreciated. So thank you very much once again, and take care. Welcome, everyone, to the Co-Management Commons podcast, and really grateful to have another exciting guest from the Yukon, and thank you to Carrie Staples for all of her hard work coordinating these special episodes from Yukon Territory. And on this episode, we're going to be speaking with Nick Wozniewski, who's the Executive Secretariat at the Dawson District Renewable Resources Council, and super excited to learn more about what happens at Renewable Resources Council and how that all factors into the broader co-management system. But Nick, we usually start these podcasts off by giving people an opportunity to introduce themselves and share a bit about who you are and how you came to be working in co-management. So feel free to introduce yourself, and look forward to learning more from you today.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, my name is Nick Wozniewski. I'm the Executive Secretariat here with the Dawson District Renewable Resources Council. I've been in the Yukon for over 10 years now. My wife and I moved up here after she was in UBC for her Bachelor's of Education. So she did a practicum here, and we decided we liked it so much that we moved up. And I worked a while in the federal government working with First Nations, the non-self-governing First Nations. So it's Liard First Nation, Ross River Dene Council, White River First Nation in the Yukon. And I did a secondment with the Taku River Tlingit First Nation in Atlin. And after that, my wife and I decided Atlin was a bit too small and Whitehorse was a bit too big. So we moved up to Dawson City, and we've been here for, it's coming on 6 years. So I started working for the DDRC, or the Dawson District Renewable Resources Council, in 2020. And it's been a great job. I didn't have too much experience working with the other sort of co-management boards and committees before starting my work here, and it's been an amazing experience so far.
Yeah, maybe you could tell listeners, explain exactly what is the Dawson District Renewable Resources Council, because it is different from the co-management boards that are often articulated in the academic literature and in the Yukon umbrella agreements, but no doubt integral to the whole system. So maybe you could walk us through what an RRC is in the Yukon.
Yeah, so this RRC works within the traditional territory of the Tronte-Cochin First Nation. And, we're defined in Chapter 16 of the Umbrella Final Agreement, and then, defined further within the First Nations Final Agreement. And the main intent was for local management of renewable resources. And, that does include what nowadays people think of solar panel and hydroelectricity. It's specific to hunting, fishing, trapping, and timber harvest. So at a local level, the Resource Council is made up equally of First Nation representatives. So there's 4 from the Toronto-Quitchin that are appointed by the First Nation, and there's 4 that are appointed by the Yukon government. And yeah, I mean, we have a direct line to the minister about wildlife issues and anything related to the harvest of renewable resources, but we do a lot of advocacy work in the community. We collect data on local harvest, and we engage with the youth in the schools. We have some education programs, and we do a lot of different projects as well that aren't related to just, speaking with the ministers about, issues that pertain to renewable resources. Yeah, that's just a quick summary, and we can go into those projects in detail if you'd like to.
I definitely would like to learn about the different projects at the community level, but I just wanted to check my own understanding and clarification. So you mentioned there's 4 First Nations members and 4 from the Yukon government. So there's no federal appointees to the RRCs, just all provincial and local?
Yeah, that's correct. And there's 2 co-chairs, I guess, within the 4. It's just at the territorial, the Yukon government level and the Toronto-Quitchin First Nation level.
Right. So it's the territorial minister, and I'm just wondering, like, as a renewable resource council, do they generally make recommendations, or do they get to make some decisions as well at the local level? Just trying to understand that. It's always a big discussion topic.
So we are, like, in the final agreement, we're supposed to be actually able to enact our own bylaws that can manage trapping specifically. But the Wildlife Act, has taken a while to sort of catch up, and the legislation really doesn't allow that. So we work with another board that's kind of above us, the Fish and Wildlife Management Board. So we all feed into them to bring resolutions forward for bylaw changes that can be passed either Yukon-wide or at a local level. So we can directly impact and create change in legislature, but it's a process, definitely, that takes time. The Renewable Resources Councils, they can come together actually, and there has been a few joint resolutions that they've made. The most recent one was sort of calling on the Yukon government to develop legislation to address the sheep population and the possible transmission of MOVI, which is a sort of disease that can spread through domestic sheep. That was a big initiative that the RCs, they all got together and asked the government to sort of act on it right away, and a control order was put in place to manage that issue. So that was a bigger one. At the local level, I mean, sometimes we've requested the government look at threshold hunts if there's a concern about harvest of a certain species. I know the Mayo RC put in place a threshold hunt to limit the amount of moose that can be harvested in their traditional territory to 12, I think it is, a year. So yeah, there's things like that can happen. But we haven't really exercised our sort of ability to create laws, or, we have our own trapping guidelines that we use that is sort of a guideline that we work in partnership with the local conservation officers to make sure trap lines are utilized efficiently. And so there isn't any trap lines that aren't being used, and that's within the spirit and intent of the final agreements. And we've had that guideline in place for over 5 years now. It works really well, specifically because we have a good working relationship with the conservation officers here and the local biologists that we work with. So yeah, we'd like to create our own laws around trapping and hunting now, but we're just waiting for the Wildlife Act to sort of catch up with what's detailed in the final agreements.
Nice. Yeah, when I was doing some reading and thank you to Carrie Staples for doing some research as well. I learned about a trapping week, so maybe we could talk a bit about trapping. That in itself has not been a topic that has come up much in other podcasts. So would love to learn more about Trapping Week and other initiatives in that area that you are involved with.
Yeah, we're in the schools a lot. We've developed a curriculum with the school and Tronagwichan First Nation. So we call it Trapping Week. We've been working with the younger grades, I guess kindergarten to grade 4. So we do in-class workshops, and there's a curriculum there that some of the council members are in the classroom with the conservation officers and the local biologist that works for Yukon government. And we follow this curriculum and few key topics that we focus on for each grade. Sort of to progress them up to, we actually do skinning workshops with them. So in grade 5, they get a demo. They skin a marten. Well, they see a marten getting skinned. And then grade 6, they skin their own squirrel. And then grade 7, they all skin their own marten. So we've been doing this for quite a few years now. We've been doing it for over 7 years because we've seen from the early grades go up all the way to skinning their marten. And yeah, it's amazing. Just every year we've been advocating and kind of bringing this program in, and it's all the kids are familiar with it, and Tronagwichan really support it because they think trapping's a great way to teach kids about this really valuable resource and teach kids about respect for the animal and tradition of harvesting and how important it is. So yeah, it's an amazing program. And also with that, we do a big trapping fur show every 2 years. It's a lot to organize, but every 2 years, we invite all trappers from kind of all around the world, mostly Yukoners. They come up and they submit furs in to be judged, and there's lots of prizes. And we do some like live workshops, and there's some contests like the fastest trap setting contest and things like that. So yeah, the kids that skin their marten in the school program submit their furs in to be judged, and they get a prize too for participating in that as well. So
And what was the goal of the education program at the end of the day? What are you hoping comes out of doing that from K to 4, just to help people understand?
yeah, I mean, a part of it is like teaching the kids about the animals and the ecosystems, and then Tronagwichan sort of traditions and culture as well. So that's a big part of it. And part of it is like there's still trappers here. It's a very tough life. Like it used to be a very that was a profession here, and people did that as it wasn't just a lifestyle, right? There was an industry around it, and so that was important as well. I mean, now it's changed. Like the industry isn't there, but there's still a lot of people crafting, and we do send like the whole process of like tanning and crafting is a big part of it too. So it kind of brings everybody together, like all parts of the community. We have trappers that actually trap and provide the animals for us, and they're instructors as well. Like during the skinning workshops, we invite them to help out. So everybody for that whole week is kind of together, working together to deliver this program. And it's like kids are excited about it. They know the faces and they know us, and it's like a kind of staple, consistent thing that happens there. So it's really nice, actually.
It's reminding me of some different programs that I've been involved with on the other side of the country in Labrador, and just seems like such a great way to try to ensure cultural continuity and passing on Indigenous knowledge and getting that in the school system where young people are spending a lot of their time, obviously, is a really smart idea. And it's really neat to hear that the RRC is doing that. And if you, I'll definitely share more about this when we share the podcast, just so other people can watch the YouTube video and things. And I noticed that you're into creating videos and stuff on YouTube as well. Is that a particular strategy that you've been using as well to try to do audio visual stuff? Because not everyone's into that either.
Yeah, it's a recent thing. Like our trapping week video was the first one we did. Just to There's a lot of other RSCs and a lot of communities asking about the program and how it works. And we were kind of always explaining ourselves at all the annual meetings, and so we decided a video would be nice to share with people so they can get a better idea of how it works and what it looks like. And we had an amazing amount of interest. We partnered with the First Nation, and they put it on their social media sort of platforms, and it's a great way to tell people about us and what we do. So we just recently did another one about our salmon restoration project that we do every summer. It's another youth focused project where we hire youth to help us. These salmon get kind of stuck in these pools with the high water. They follow these like channels called avulsions, and when the water recedes quickly, they get stuck, and we trap them and put them back in the main sort of river, the Klondike River. And we've been hiring mentors to join us, like biologists, and we've had like a PhD student work with us, and the youth just teach them about salmon. And yeah, we just did a video about that as well. So yeah, it's amazing. The videos, like they get a lot of traction. A lot of people watch them. Not a lot of people attend our meetings, our public meetings every month that we have, but the videos do well for sure.
Yeah, interesting. With the animals, I guess where there is, I'm assuming. To correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming there's less trapping pressure maybe now than there was in the past when there was an industry and or a bigger industry. Like I'm just wondering the status of some of the key species now, like you mentioned martin and others. Are the animals doing pretty good right now, or are there any areas where the RRC is concerned?
It's tough to completely understand what's happening because there is a cycle with the snowshoe hare. And like since I started, every year we do this local knowledge survey. We have about 20 to 30 people that we consider sort of knowledge experts here. And we have this survey that we conduct and ask them about questions and certain trends that they're seeing and any issues or concerns. So when I started, I mean, there was no snowshoe hare, so there was not a lot of martin, not a lot of lynx, but it's coming back right now. So at a level at the small game, there's a lot out there right now, and I haven't been hearing too much. It's more things are just changing on a landscape level, like the weather, the access for trappers is really difficult. The rivers aren't freezing, so it's less an issue about the animals that they're trapping. It's more about the environment and the weather. Yeah, I mean, and also just trapping nowadays with the market being just the way it is. It's more of a lifestyle hobby thing. It's not something that people can sustain themselves on. So, I mean, there are a lot of families that are trapping and trying to teach their kids about it, or there's people wanting to, kind of just live that lifestyle, and that's happening a lot more these days. But yeah, as far as like, animals, yeah, the small game, I haven't heard too much. There's the cycles, and people believe everything's happening there, and there's not too much of a concern. But it's really the environment and access out into the hinterland there that's a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier too when we were chatting about a community trap line. I'm super interested to learn more about that. Like what are you doing there, and like what's the goal and how it all works?
Well, there's big concession areas in, it doesn't, I know all the other provinces deal with trapping different. And I think Yukon's a bit unique is, there's concession areas and one person has access to that one concession area. And these are huge areas that, one trapper can work on. So there's one large concession area around Dawson City that I think it was 20 years ago, First Nation trapper. I was working with the Yukon government. They decided to kind of close up an area around town and, repurpose it more for sort of education and, that kind of thing. There are a lot of different stories about how that happened, but it ended up being that the Yukon government, came to us and requested that maybe this is perfect for this podcast, co-manage this trap line. So this small area that was carved out around town was 5 subzones were created within this one area. And we've been letting people apply and trap for one season in one of these 5 zones. One of the zones we keep available for the school. So the school takes students out to trap on. And the others are sort of just, within town, within city limits, actually. Well, there's 2 over on the other side in West Dawson, which aren't in city limits. So yeah, they get one season to trap. There's specific rules. Like you can't use the really aggressive conibear sort of, as we understand, other land users, dog walkers and things like that. So it's more directed for smaller, like marten, and we do permit some larger sort of neck snares, but just in one location. And there's very specific rules around signage and things like that. And, so far it's worked really well. And the trappers that have been using it, usually younger people that really want to learn about trapping and you don't have access, or, you don't even need a snowmobile actually to trap these lines. You can, use your truck and access some of the areas without a snowmobile. So it's worked really well. It's a really great program that people really appreciate.
So is there a particular type of trapper that gets priority in that area? Or can anyone apply, or?
Yeah, you have to take the course and get your assistant trapper's certificate. So it's a Yukon government course. Yeah, and mostly it's, there's there's 2 families that trap the lines in West Dawson right now, and then some younger people that are trapping over here. And with these concessions, there's not very many of them, and they're being sold right now for very high prices. So it's this. It's interesting that the culture of trapping, it's shifted from what it was 20, 30 years ago, where someone could have access to a trap line and just have a snowmobile, and that could be their job, and it could sustain them. They could live in this cabin all winter and make enough money to sustain themselves over the summer, and that would be what they do. But now, these trap lines are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's very the entry point's it's a challenge for everybody to get into. You have to get to know someone who has a concession and is willing to let you be an assistant trapper on their line. So yeah, we feel it's an opportunity that's unique but very needed in the Yukon, and there's a demand for it. Every single year, all our trap lines get applied for and used.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that, or wouldn't have realized that a trap line could be for sale and be so valuable. It was quite surprising. So, do most people who own these trap lines have had them for some time, or is that only how it works? You have one until you pass on or sell it, type of?
Yeah, there used to be this spot land application process for people to be able to build sort of cabins out in in the remote areas of the Yukon, but that really doesn't work for people anymore. The only way to sort of have a cabin out in the remote areas of Yukon is if you're a concession holder or a trapper. There's other opportunities, but it's tough. Or if you're an Indigenous First Nation person too, there's opportunities as well. So, but there's a lot of Indigenous people that own trap lines too. families have their concession areas too, trapping concession areas. And it's really interesting because within the final agreement, and as part of what we're supposed to manage, is there's supposed to be, it's supposed to lean more towards First Nation owning the concessions. And it's not quite there yet. So there's these special rules when trap lines are sold where the First Nation has a first right of refusal on the trap line. And there's these things that are in the final agreements that were put in there so the First Nation can sort of still actively sort of maintain and sort of keep the trap lines, and that they don't all go towards, non-First Nations people, so non-Indigenous. So yeah, it's interesting. And that's kind of what we like, some of the issues that we're working through as a council with the First Nation, figure out how to enable that, because that's a final agreement clause that all the sort of RCs are looking at. It's supposed to be within 25 years of the signing of the final agreement, 70% of all trap lines should be Indigenous to the First Nation in that traditional territory.
And is that process going well? Like, is it gradually making that transition like the agreement had envisioned?
It's complicated. It's very complicated because, like what I just told you about trap lines being expensive and being really sought after. So there's different sort of classifications of trap. Well, there's two. There's either it's an Indigenous, so it's like sort of managed by the First Nation, or it's not. So there's some Indigenous people that have these trap lines that aren't sort of under the umbrella of the First Nation, and they don't want to give it away because it could be valuable for them or their family in the future. So there's these complexities. I don't want to get too far into the details, but yeah, it makes it interesting for sure. Definitely, it's not cut and dry.
Fair enough. So how about the meetings that you have? Maybe you could take us through kind of what an agenda of the RRC meeting looks like when everyone gets together, and what type of discussions sort of happen at that level.
Yeah. So we take minutes, and like we approve the agenda and previous meeting minutes, and then we usually go through kind of housekeeping. We talk about our meetings that we have planned, or events, workshops, that kind of thing. And then we have a lot of like standing items, but like old business, new business. Like I could talk about what we're discussing tonight because we have a meeting tonight. We have a wolf staring workshop that we're working with the Enhancement Trust, the Yukon First Nation Wildlife Enhancement Trust. So we're putting that on, just talking about details around that. Our local knowledge survey that we do, we're kind of looking at it again, and we're wanting to expand it out to the entire community. So we're reducing the length of it and wanting to put it online to see if we can get, like a larger data set to work with, that we can more clearly sort of see trends and just collect more information. So we're talking about that. We're planning for our first show that's going to be happening in the spring. Yeah, and we have lots of letters that come in, that require the review of council. There's development projects as well. So any sort of bigger mining project, even the plasters, sort of smaller plaster mining projects, we have a lot of mining industrial activity in the Dawson area. So all those projects kind of get triaged. We can't respond to all of them, but the bigger ones we look at and decide if we want to sort of write a letter and write any recommendations for anything that could impact renewable resources.
Yeah, I think the other thing you mentioned there that would be really interesting, we've had a lot of people on the podcast talk about local knowledge, research, and under different terms, but I'd be curious to learn about your local knowledge survey and how that's done, and is it available for people to read and whatnot? Like, I'd be curious about the methods of all that, but it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, we've been doing it this is our 8th year, and we haven't been sharing the data widely. We've been sharing it with researchers, the Land Use Planning Commission that just created the draft land use plan for the Dawson region. They use some of our data. And mostly we've been using it ourselves just to like look at trends and kind of any issues that arise, to bring those forward to the biologist, or there's any, research that we should recommend the Yukon government undertake or Trumbukwitchin. So that's what it's been doing so far. But, we work with a small sample base of 20 to 30 people that the council sort of decided or chosen, and they think are sort of the more knowledgeable of the people here in the community. But we're really wanting to sort of understand in better detail what's affecting everybody, especially around, we've been hearing a lot about just access to renewable resources and how there's a lot of non-locals coming up to the Dawson from other parts of the Yukon, and it's impacting, local harvest of moose and caribou and that kind of thing. So we're kind of looking at that, and seeing how we can sort of get more data on that, because hunting effort isn't really recorded by the Yukon government right now. Harvest is, and so we're seeing a data gap there that maybe we can fill, and we're hearing that as well from community members. So we want to learn more about that issue.
You are listening to a special Yukon edition of the Co-Management Commons podcast, supported by Yukon University and UArctic. The podcast is produced by Cloudberry Connections and hosted by Jamie Snook in collaboration with Kiri Staples and David Silas. Enjoy the rest of the conversation, and thank you for caring about Indigenous co-management and honoring our treaties.
But I think we can probably start to wrap up. And Nick, all of this sounds really interesting. I know I've learned a ton from our conversation, right from the makeup of the RRC to the different initiatives, and really interesting to talk to someone more in depth on what's happening specifically with trapping as well, and interesting to learn how important it is to your region. And there's a lot going on with your specific RRC, and I'm curious, are you the only employee there, or is this typical for all the RRCs to be getting this much work done? Because I just know it's always a challenge to have enough resources. So I'm curious how you're managing it all.
Yeah, I am the only employee, and not all of the RCs are doing the same things. Definitely, the situations are different in each community. I consider myself lucky because, I have a co-chair, Dan Reynolds. I'll just let everybody know his name. He's been one of the the longest standing RC members in the Yukon right now. So, and I credit him with like a lot of the initiatives that started and continue to like keep going and be strong within the community. So yeah, I mean, it's always key people in the community that take charge and kind of like see the gaps and see where the RCs can be useful for the community over and above just our like what's defined in the final agreement, and that that link we have with the minister about issues. We can be a lot more than that. So yeah, and there's the council's very, we've had like great attendance, and like everybody's very motivated to see these projects happen. So and one I didn't tell you guys about too is we work with outfitters to bring moose into the community, and we run sort of butchering and sausage making workshops too. So that's happening next week, and that's a big thing we're talking about tonight as well. So yeah, it's another big like project that's a favorite in town actually, because everybody who takes the course or participates like gets to go home with a box full of moose. So yeah, it's nice.
No, I could see that one being very popular, and I just think of all the sausages and stuff now. That would be really popular. It's making me hungry. It's later in the day here on the East Coast. So as we sign off, I don't know if there was any other final word that you wanted to share or anything that you think people should know about DRRCs or whatnot. This audience, I guess, for this co-management podcast is pretty broad and it's all across Canada. So if there was anything that you would like to leave with listeners, feel free.
Yeah, those two videos. Maybe you can provide a link. They're great. The salmon restoration project, and then the school trapping initiative, trapping week. It's a really good. They're both really great snapshots of Dawson. One in the winter, one in the summer. So yeah, those are great videos to watch.
I guess maybe a quick synopsis of the salmon restoration project would be interesting. And I know in some other guests that we've had, there seemed to be some hope that salmon were starting to get back into the rivers and whatnot. So, like, what are you doing as an RRC for salmon restoration in particular?
I mean, that's it really. It's like providing that little bit of hope. That's the project is trying to do. It's getting the youth motivated about anything they could do could impact the salmon, and like it's really important is this next generation to be sort of like the next salmon advocates. They need to know about it and they can't feel hopeless about the issue. So that's what we were hoping the video would speak to. It seems like a hopeless cause right now. It just seems like it's getting worse and worse. But
And do you have partners on that project?
well, we work with the mentors that join the program are great. Like the person who started the program of rescuing the salmon, who discovered these salmon in this one area. He was from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, who retired and kind of worked as a consultant for us. And we've had some like technical assistance from people that have been part of the project for a long time. There's like canoeing involved, so there's a lot of logistics. Like the youth learn about kind of survival sort of skills and canoeing as well. So yeah, trying to push in provides the canoes, so there is partnership happening as well. And we're like the funding. I have to apply for funding because it's something that we can't sustain through our operational budget. So Indigenous Services Canada was funding the program the past couple of years, but I think this next year we're going to be working with hopefully with the Enhancement Trust, the Yukon Enhancement Trust, or the Salmon Subcommittee. We'll see. I have to submit those funding applications pretty soon here.
That must be a big part of your work too, is it? Doing the different funding applications to do all these different initiatives.
Our operating budget's very limited. Like it's we were able to travel a little bit to meetings and hold meetings, and my salary's within that, but like we have a bit for these special projects, but we do apply for a lot of funding. The first show is a big one that we rely on external funding for, and the salmon project is another. Yeah, I don't know if we're kind of nearing the end, but there's every 5 to 10 years there's a review of the final agreement in the boards and committees and their roles and responsibilities, and we're holding a meeting in January. I don't know if you know about that, Jamie. But that's happening. It's a big meeting, so all the boards and committees are coming together to talk about, what our roles are and what the challenges are and what we want to see happen moving into the future. So that's happening in January. I'm looking forward to meeting with all the other boards and committees and discussing that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I am familiar with that exact meeting. If you wouldn't mind emailing the information along, it sounds like it would be super interesting, and would be happy to follow up about it. And there might be someone that could share more about that event itself. I think would be a really interesting podcast. And doing that every 5 years, I feel, is a smart idea, just to make sure all of these agreements are still living up to their spirit and intent and are current and relevant. So I do think that's really progressive, really. I know that's not necessarily happening in all areas of Canada where there's these agreements in place. So Yeah, no, I'd appreciate that if you could email that along. And with that, I'll just say thank you again for your time today. I just feel like I got a different flavor for what Dawson is like too now as a town, because I don't know if everybody would suffer from this as well, but there seems to be a lot of thinking about the gold rush in that area of the country, and there's obviously a lot more to the town and territory, and I can get a feel for that just having this conversation with you. So I'm happy for that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, come visit anytime. There's definitely more to the town than the gold rush for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I would love to visit. I've been to Whitehorse many times, but haven't gotten to Dawson yet. So maybe in the future there will be a road trip to Dawson, and even up to Inuvik would be really nice. I haven't done that whole road trip yet. So
Yeah, the first show that we put on, it's during the community Thadi Gras, we call it. It's a spring carnival that happens here, so it's a good time to visit as well. I feel it's a really special time because it's still full on winter, but the days are long, so there, access out along the river, it's kind of things are frozen. It's beautiful here and sunny, and always like a really nice time of the year for sure.
it's called Thadi Gras.
Thadi Gras, yeah.
Yeah, that's well named. No, it sounds like my favorite time of year in Labrador as well. Is it in March when they do that?
Yeah, middle of March. Yeah.
Nice. All right, you're gonna make me homesick. So we'll.
Where in Nova Scotia are you?
I just recently moved to Avonport, Nova Scotia. It's about 10 minutes from Wolfville. Yeah, about an hour from the airport, an hour from Halifax. But until this summer, I had spent my whole life up in Labrador, and the spring is definitely a special time of year. With everyone gets their suntans, and it's just a nice time to be out.
Sunglasses, tans.
Yeah, raccoon eyes.
Yeah.
Not getting in that. That would be embarrassing for me.
Yeah. There's other funny things too, like everybody knows about the Pit. It's one of the oldest bars like in Canada, pretty much. But there's a tricycle race that goes through the Pit, and you can enter into that one. That one's a good spectator sport. And there's a big hockey tournament in front. Pretty fun. Yeah, there's other stuff too, like the classic rendezvous type activities that happen in Whitehorse. That's another spring carnival thing. Chainsaw Chuck. That's another one. Yeah, it's a fun weekend.
No, it definitely sounds fun. All right, well, I'll let you run, and hopefully we will get to meet in person. And
yeah, sounds great, Jamie.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the full podcast. Please like the podcast, subscribe, and leave comments so we can connect. If you are interested in joining a dedicated Indigenous community of practice with many of Canada's leading practitioners and thinkers in this area, you can skip over and visit our website at www.co-management.ca. Getting signed up is easy, and professional development is a tangible and effective way to show your commitment to reconciliation.